My name is Ursula, 32 years old. Growing up, I believed family always had your back. My dad was my hero, the man who promised to support my dreams of becoming a doctor. We even had a special college fund set aside for it. Then one day, everything changed. He took the money meant for my future and gave it to my cousin Adam. That betrayal altered the course of my life, but not in the way my father expected. Before I dive into how my own father betrayed me, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories about family betrayal and the unexpected ways life can turn around. I grew up in a comfortable middle-class suburban home in Michigan. Our neighborhood had those perfectly trimmed lawns and weekend barbecues where all the neighbors gathered. My father, James, worked as a manufacturing plant manager. He was the kind of man who left the house before sunrise and came home with grease still under his fingernails despite his management position. He believed in leading by example, getting his hands dirty alongside his team. Everyone respected him for that. My mother, Diana, was the emotional center of our home. She taught third grade at the local elementary school, and she approached parenthood with the same patient guidance she showed her students. I can still remember how she would sit with me at the kitchen table helping with homework, making even the most difficult subjects seem manageable. Her smile could light up the darkest room. When I was 12, we lost her to breast cancer. The illness took her quickly, only 6 months from diagnosis to her final day. My father and I were devastated. For months, our house felt hollow, like all the warmth had been sucked out. Dad tried his best to fill both roles, but there was always something missing. We became even closer through our shared grief, clinging to each other, like survivors of a shipwreck. My father had one brother, Uncle Robert. He worked in sales at various companies, but never seemed to stay anywhere long. His wife, Aunt Pamela, was a part-time dental receptionist. They lived about 30 minutes away in a smaller house in a neighborhood that had seen better days. They were always struggling financially, something that was discussed in hushed tones when they weren't around. Their son Adam was exactly 3 months younger than me. Where I was driven and focused from an early age, Adam drifted. He played video games, hung out with friends, and scraped by with C's and occasional B's. He wasn't a bad kid, just unmotivated. Despite their different circumstances, my father and Uncle Robert maintained a close relationship. They spoke on the phone several times a week and got together at least twice a month. There was an unspoken understanding that my father would help Uncle Robert when needed, whether it was lending him money for car repairs or helping him find a new job when the previous one inevitably ended. As for me, I was always academically inclined. I brought home straight A's from elementary school onward. Science fascinated me, especially biology. By the time I was 14, I had my heart set on becoming a doctor. I volunteered at the local hospital during summers, shadowing physicians whenever possible. My bedroom walls were covered with human anatomy charts instead of boy band posters. My father encouraged this dream wholeheartedly. "You've got your mother's brains and my determination," he would say. "There's nothing you can't achieve." He promised me repeatedly that I wouldn't have to worry about paying for college or medical school. "Your mother and I started a college fund the day you were born," he told me, "and I've kept it growing since she's been gone. Your education is the most important investment I'll ever make." At family gatherings, my achievements were often the main topic of conversation. "Ursula got the highest score in her class on the biology exam," my father would announce proudly. Or, "Ursula's science project won first place at the regional fair." I sometimes caught glimpses of tension in Uncle Robert's expression when my father talked about my accomplishments or my future as a doctor. Adam would slouch in his chair during these conversations, playing with his phone under the table. Occasionally, Uncle Robert would interject with some minor achievement of Adam's, like making the second-string basketball team or getting a B+ on a history project. My father would nod politely, but everyone knew the comparison wasn't favorable. I noticed the subtle competition between the brothers, though neither would have admitted it existed. Uncle Robert clearly envied my father's stable career, nice house, and successful daughter. My father, in turn, felt a sense of superiority that he would never verbalize, but was evident in his generosity toward his less fortunate brother. Throughout high school, I maintained my perfect GPA while participating in science club debate team and volunteer work. I took every advanced placement class available and scored in the top percentile on my SATs. College recruiters began to take notice, sending brochures from prestigious universities across the country. My father and I would review them together at the dining room table, discussing the merits of each program. Harvard has an excellent pre-med program, he would say, but so does Johns Hopkins. And Michigan is no slouch either if you want to stay closer to home. We mapped out potential paths, weighing the benefits of different schools against their distance from home and their connections to top medical schools. All the while, I believed my future was secure. My father had promised, and in our house, promises were sacred. I had no reason to doubt that when the time came, the money would be there for the education we had planned together for so long. Adam, meanwhile, rarely discussed college. When asked about his plans, he would shrug and mumble something about keeping his options open or maybe community college. Uncle Robert would quickly change the subject, as if his son's lack of ambition embarrassed him. Little did I know that these family dynamics, which seemed so normal and stable to me then, were building toward a betrayal that would alter the course of my life forever. The first signs of trouble appeared during my senior year of high school in the fall of 2008. The economy was crashing, and no one was untouched. My father came home one evening looking more tired than I had ever seen him. He sat heavily at the kitchen table and told me that his company was downsizing. "I still have my job," he assured me, "but they've cut my salary by 20%, and I'll be doing the work of two managers now." He rubbed his temples, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his way of fighting off stress headaches. "We'll be okay, but things might be a little tight for a while." I nodded, trying not to show my concern. A 20% reduction wasn't catastrophic, but it wasn't nothing either. Still, I reassured myself the college fund had been growing for 18 years. This temporary setback wouldn't affect my future. Uncle Robert wasn't so fortunate. Just a week later, he lost his job entirely when his company folded. My father invited him and Aunt Pamela over for dinner, and the conversation quickly turned to their financial situation. "The mortgage is 3 months behind already," Uncle Robert admitted, his voice strained. "The bank is threatening foreclosure if we don't catch up by the end of the month." My father looked deeply troubled. "How much do you need to avoid foreclosure?" When Uncle Robert named the figure, my father winced but nodded. "I can help you out this time. Family has to stick together." Over the next few months, I noticed my father becoming increasingly anxious about money. He started bringing lunch from home instead of buying it at work. Our thermostat was set lower than usual that winter, and he suggested I apply for a few safety schools with good scholarship programs, in addition to my dream universities. I was in the thick of college application season, spending hours perfecting essays and securing recommendations from teachers. I applied to 15 schools in total, including 7 Ivy League and elite institutions, 5 competitive state universities, and 3 safety schools that my father insisted upon. As acceptances began to arrive in spring, I felt a mixture of elation and growing unease. I was admitted to 12 of the 15 schools, including Harvard, Yale, and Johns Hopkins. Each acceptance letter brought a moment of celebration, followed by an awkward silence when my father would say, "That's wonderful news, Ursi. We should look into what kind of financial aid they offer." Financial aid had never been part of our college discussions before. I began to wonder just how badly the economic downturn had affected our finances. One night I overheard my father on the phone with Uncle Robert. Their voices were raised, something unusual for my typically composed father. "I understand you're in a difficult position, Rob, but you're asking too much," my father said, tension evident in his voice. "I've already helped with the mortgage, the car payment, and the medical bills." There was a pause while Uncle Robert responded. "I know he's your son, and I know it's important," my father continued, his voice dropping. "But you have to understand I have responsibilities too. Ursula is counting on me." Another pause, longer this time. "That's not fair, Rob. Don't put that on me. We're brothers, but that doesn't mean—" His voice trailed off, and I heard him sigh deeply. "Let me think about it. But no promises." The next day at school, my cousin Adam approached me in the hallway. We attended the same high school, but rarely interacted there, moving in completely different social circles. "Hey, Ursula," he said, shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot. "Guess what I'm thinking about Princeton next year?" I stared at him in disbelief. Adam had never expressed interest in an Ivy League school before, and his grades were nowhere near competitive enough for Princeton. That's surprising, I managed to say. I didn't know you were interested in Princeton. He shrugged. Yeah, well, Dad says it would be a good opportunity. They have a business program or something. He couldn't even name the specific program he was supposedly interested in. Adam, Princeton is really competitive, I said carefully. Have you looked at their admission requirements? Dad says it'll work out, he replied with a confidence that seemed entirely misplaced. Anyway, see you around. As he walked away, a cold feeling settled in my stomach. Something wasn't right. Adam had never shown academic ambition, and suddenly he was talking about Princeton, and the way he said his father thought it would work out struck me as odd. When I tried to discuss college finances with my father that evening, he became evasive. Don't worry about the money, Ursi, he said, not meeting my eyes. Just focus on deciding which school is the best fit academically. We'll figure out the rest. But his tone lacked the confidence it had always held when discussing my college plans. And I noticed he had started taking on overtime shifts at the plant, coming home even later than usual, with dark circles under his eyes. Despite my growing concerns, I tried to focus on finishing high school strong. I was valedictorian, and preparing my graduation speech took considerable time and emotional energy. I wanted to honor my mother's memory while looking toward the future she had always believed would be bright. The day before graduation, I found my father sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of financial documents spread before him. When he saw me, he quickly gathered them up, but not before I glimpsed the logo of my college fund investment company on one of the statements. Is everything okay with my college fund? I asked directly. His smile was too quick, too forced. Everything's fine, Ursi. Just doing some planning. But everything was not fine, and I was about to discover just how drastically my future had been altered without my knowledge or consent. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. I delivered my valedictorian speech to enthusiastic applause, focusing on themes of perseverance and honoring those who helped us along the way. My father sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Uncle Robert, Aunt Pamela, and Adam were there too, though Adam looked bored throughout the ceremony. That evening, we had a celebration dinner at our house. Dad grilled steaks and made my favorite potato salad. Uncle Robert brought an expensive bottle of champagne, which seemed odd given their financial troubles. Nothing but the best for our graduate, he said with a strange smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. During dinner, Uncle Robert raised his glass in a toast. To family, he said, his gaze fixed on my father rather than me, the supposed guest of honor. Family taking care of family. That's what really matters in this world. My father nodded solemnly, and they shared a look I couldn't quite interpret. The celebration felt off somehow, with undercurrents I didn't understand. The next morning, while my father was at work, curiosity and growing anxiety led me to his home office. I told myself I just wanted to check on the college fund to reassure myself that everything was as promised. I found the most recent statement in his filing cabinet, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The account balance was less than a quarter of what it should have been. There had been several large withdrawals over the past 6 months, the most recent just 2 weeks ago. This wasn't enough to cover even 1 year at any of the prestigious schools I'd been accepted to, let alone 4 years plus medical school. When my father came home that evening, I was waiting for him, the statement on the kitchen table between us. His face fell when he saw it. You went through my private papers, he said, but there was no real anger in his voice, only resignation. What happened to my college fund? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. You promised that money was for my education. He sat down heavily across from me. It's complicated, Ursi. Uncomplicate it, I demanded, my hands shaking. He took a deep breath. Your Uncle Robert was in serious trouble. Worse than I initially told you. Not just the mortgage and bills. He had some gambling debts, people threatening him. And Adam needs a fresh start away from some bad influences here. I stared at him in disbelief. So you gave them my college money without even discussing it with me? Not all of it, he said weakly. Just most of it. For what exactly? He couldn't meet my eyes. Adam got accepted to Princeton. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. How his grades aren't nearly good enough. My father shifted uncomfortably. There were some additional considerations. You paid for him to get in, I said flatly. It wasn't a question. It's not that simple. There was a substantial donation to their athletic department. Adam plays basketball, and with the right recommendations. I felt sick. You used my future to buy him a spot he doesn't deserve. Adam needs this chance more than you do, my father said, his voice hardening slightly. You're smart enough to get scholarships. You could go to state on a full ride. Adam doesn't have those options. Because he didn't earn them, I shouted, tears starting to form. I worked for every opportunity I have. I stayed up late studying while he was partying. I volunteered and built my resume while he played video games. And now you're rewarding him for doing nothing. It's not about rewarding anyone, my father countered. Robert threatened to cut ties completely if I didn't help. Said I always thought I was better than him, that I never really helped when it counted. He's my only brother, Ursula. My only family besides you. So you chose him over me, I said, the reality of the betrayal sinking in. I didn't choose anyone over anyone. I made a hard decision to keep our family together. No, you sacrificed my dreams to appease Uncle Robert. And for what? So Adam can flunk out of a school he doesn't belong in while I give up everything I've worked for. You'll understand when you're older, he said dismissively. Family comes first. I am your family, I cried. I'm your daughter. And you always will be, he said. But this isn't the end of the world. You can still go to college, just not Harvard or Yale. There are plenty of good state schools with scholarship programs. I looked at my father, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the man sitting across from me. This wasn't the father who had promised to support my dreams. This was someone who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. You had no right, I said quietly. That money was for my future. Mom wanted that for me. At the mention of my mother, something flickered in his eyes, a moment of doubt or guilt, but it passed quickly. Your mother would understand the importance of family loyalty, he said firmly. I stood up, unable to bear the conversation any longer. Don't you dare tell me what Mom would think. She believed in me. She would never have taken away my future to give it to someone who didn't earn it. I retreated to my bedroom and locked the door, collapsing onto my bed in tears. The future I had planned for years, the path my father and I had mapped out together, had been yanked away without warning. All those acceptances to prestigious universities, all those possibilities suddenly beyond reach. For the next 3 days, I barely left my room. My father knocked occasionally, asking if I wanted to talk, but I remained silent. What was there to say? He had made his choice, and now I had to live with the consequences. As the initial shock and hurt began to subside, another emotion took its place: determination. If my father wouldn't support my dreams, I would find another way. I might not be able to attend the schools I had worked so hard to get into, but I would still make something of myself with or without his help. On the 4th day, I emerged from my room with a new resolve. I sat down at my computer and began researching scholarship options, financial aid packages, and work-study programs. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but I refused to let my father's betrayal define my future. The summer after graduation passed in a blur of paperwork and planning. I declined all my prestigious university acceptances with a heavy heart and accepted the offer from State University, which had offered me a substantial academic scholarship. It wouldn't cover everything, but it was a start. I took a job waiting tables at a local restaurant, working double shifts whenever possible to save for the remaining college expenses. My father tried several times to discuss the situation, but I kept our conversations brief and to the point. The trust between us had been shattered, and I wasn't ready to pretend otherwise. Meanwhile, Adam posted pictures on social media of his college shopping sprees, buying designer clothes and expensive electronics for his Princeton dorm room. Each post was like salt in an open wound. He hadn't even had the decency to thank me for the involuntary donation that made his college experience possible. When August arrived, I moved into a cramped dormitory room I shared with 2 other scholarship students. The space was tiny, with 3 beds squeezed into a room designed for 2. My portion of the room was barely large enough for a twin bed and a small desk. My roommates Jasmine and Tara were friendly enough, but we all worked multiple jobs and saw little of each other. That first semester was one of the most challenging periods of my life. I took a full course load of science classes while working 20 hours a week at the campus cafeteria and another 15 at a coffee shop off campus. I slept an average of 5 hours a night, often studying until the early hours of the morning. My relationship with my father deteriorated further. Our phone calls became increasingly infrequent and strained. He asked about my classes and seemed genuinely interested in my academic progress, but neither of us addressed the elephant in the room. The betrayal hung between us unacknowledged, but ever present. When Thanksgiving break arrived, I considered not going home at all. The thought of facing Uncle Robert and Adam was almost unbearable. But in the end, I decided to go, if only to show them that I was surviving despite their actions. The holiday dinner was excruciating. Uncle Robert and Aunt Pamela arrived with Adam, who was home from Princeton for the break. He dominated the conversation with stories about his amazing college experience, the parties he attended, and the connections he was making. My roommate's father is a partner at Goldman Sachs, he boasted. He's already talking about setting me up with an internship next summer. My father nodded approvingly. That's wonderful, Adam. Networking is so important these days. When the conversation finally turned to me, my father asked about my classes at State. They're fine, I said flatly. I'm maintaining a 4.0 while working 35 hours a week. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Well, Uncle Robert said with forced cheer, not everyone is cut out for the pressure of an Ivy League education. State is probably a better fit for you anyway, Ursula. I bit my tongue to keep from responding. Adam smirked behind his water glass. After dinner, I overheard my father and Uncle Robert talking in the kitchen. Uncle Robert was asking for more money for Adam's expenses. The meal plan doesn't cover everything, and he needs to be able to go out with his friends to make the right connections, Uncle Robert explained. This is an investment in his future gym. To my disgust, my father agreed to send more money. When I confronted him after Uncle Robert left, he defended his decision. Adam is adjusting to a new environment. He needs support. And what about my adjustment? I asked. What about my needs? You've always been independent, he replied. Adam isn't as strong as you are. I returned to school after the break, more determined than ever to succeed on my own terms. If my family wouldn't support me, I would find others who would. That's when I met Professor Hamilton, my introduction to biochemistry instructor. She noticed my work ethic and the quality of my lab reports and asked me to stay after class one day. You have real talent, she told me, but you look exhausted. Are you getting enough rest? Something about her genuine concern broke through my carefully maintained composure. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything, the words pouring out in a torrent of emotion from my original dreams of medical school, to my father's betrayal, to my current struggle to stay afloat financially while maintaining my grades. Instead of pity, her eyes showed understanding and, more importantly, respect. What your father did was wrong, she said simply, but you're handling the consequences with remarkable grace and determination. She told me about additional scholarship opportunities I hadn't discovered in my research and suggested I apply for a paid research assistant position in her lab. The stipend isn't huge, but it's better than food service wages, and it will give you valuable experience. With Professor Hamilton's mentorship, I began to see a new path forward. Medical school might be financially out of reach for now, but there were other ways to work in medicine and scientific research. I adjusted my major slightly, focusing more on research-oriented courses that would prepare me for graduate studies in biomedical science. As I threw myself into my studies and research work, I saw on social media that Adam was struggling academically, despite all the advantages he'd been given. His posts about parties and social events far outnumbered any mentions of classes or studying. By the end of first semester, he was on academic probation, something he didn't share on social media, but which my father mentioned during one of our brief phone calls. Adam's having a hard time adjusting to the academic rigor, he said, concern evident in his voice. Your uncle asked if I could help pay for a private tutor. And will you? I asked, already knowing the answer. He's family Ursala. We don't abandon family when they're struggling. I laughed bitterly. Unless that family member is your daughter, right? He sighed. That's not fair. I haven't abandoned you. You abandoned my dreams, I countered. That's close enough. After that conversation, I made a decision. I would no longer accept any financial help from my father, not even the small monthly allowance he had been sending. I called him the next day to inform him of my decision. I don't want or need your money, I told him. I'm going to make it completely on my own from now on. Don't be ridiculous, he protested. How will you manage? I'll manage the same way I've been managing by working hard and earning what I get. Something you might want to teach your nephew about. I hung up before he could respond, feeling a strange mixture of anxiety and liberation. The path ahead would be even harder without that small financial cushion, but at least now I would be completely self-reliant. No more pretending we still had a normal father-daughter relationship when he had so clearly chosen his brother's family over me. 2 years passed, and I settled into a rhythm of work and study. I excelled academically while working multiple jobs, earning recognition from professors, and a growing number of academic distinctions. I was exhausted most of the time, but there was satisfaction in knowing that everything I achieved was entirely my own. I kept tabs on Adam through social media and occasional updates from my father. After barely scraping by his freshman year at Princeton, he dropped out halfway through his sophomore year. Thousands of dollars money that should have been mine wasted on a college experience he never appreciated or deserved. Instead of taking responsibility for his failure, Uncle Robert blamed Princeton's elitist culture and the professors who didn't understand Adam's learning style. My father incredibly seemed to accept this explanation, continuing to provide financial support as Adam figured out his next steps, which apparently involved moving into an apartment in New York City to explore opportunities in music production, whatever that meant. My father's finances were increasingly strained by supporting both his own household and, to a large extent, his brother's family. He had to refinance the house to access equity, and was working overtime regularly just to keep up with the outflow of cash to his brother and nephew. Meanwhile, I had caught the attention of several professors with my research work. Professor Hamilton recommended me for a prestigious summer research internship at a biotech company in Boston. The position was highly competitive with applicants from top universities across the country. When I received the acceptance email, I cried with joy for the first time in years. The internship came with a generous stipend enough that I could take the summer off from my other jobs and focus entirely on research. It was a glimpse of what my life could have been if my father had kept his promise. But I refused to dwell on that. Instead, I saw it as validation that I could create opportunities for myself through hard work and determination. Before leaving for Boston, I visited home briefly. My father had organized a family barbecue, insisting that I come. "It's been too long since we were all together," he said when he called to invite me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Uncle Robert, Aunt Pamela, and Adam were there when I arrived. Adam had gained weight and looked disheveled, a stark contrast to the polished Ivy League image he had tried to project before dropping out. He barely acknowledged me when I arrived, absorbed in his phone as usual. During dinner, Uncle Robert began discussing Adam's latest venture. "Adam's got real talent in music production," he announced. "He just needs the right equipment and some industry connections to get started." I noticed my father shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "Jim," Uncle Robert continued, "we were hoping you might be able to help with the initial investment, just enough for proper equipment and maybe a few courses at that music production school in the city." Before my father could respond, I found myself speaking up. "You can't be serious," I said, looking directly at Uncle Robert. "You've already taken my college fund for Adam's failed Princeton experiment, and now you want more." Uncle Robert's face reddened. "That's not fair, Ursula. Adam needed that opportunity." "And what did he do with it?" "He partied for a year and a half and dropped out," I retorted. "Meanwhile, I've been working 3 jobs to put myself through college." "Not everyone fits into the traditional academic mold," Aunt Pamela interjected. "Adam is creative. Being creative doesn't entitle him to an endless supply of other people's money," I said. "Especially not mine." Adam finally looked up from his phone. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like you're suffering at state. And Dad says you're good at getting scholarships anyway." Something inside me snapped. "I earned those scholarships through hard work, something you know nothing about. And yes, I am suffering. I sleep 5 hours a night. I haven't taken a day off in 2 years. I'm exhausted all the time. but I'm still maintaining a 4.0 GPA while supporting myself completely. I turned to my father. Tell me honestly, Dad, why does Adam deserve multiple chances at your expense when you couldn't even keep your promise to me about one opportunity that I earned? My father looked deeply uncomfortable. It's not that simple, Ursula. Adam is carrying on the family name. He needs these chances to find his path. The sexist undertone of his statement hit me like a physical blow. So that's it, Adam gets endless support because he's a boy. Because he has the precious family name that I don't. That's not what I meant. My father backpedaled, but his initial statement had revealed more than he intended. No, I think that's exactly what you meant, I said, rising from the table. Well, let me tell you something. I'm going to be successful despite the lack of family support, not because of endless handouts. I'm going to build my own life, my own career, and my own name. And when I do, it won't be because someone else sacrificed their future for me. Uncle Robert stood up as well, his face contorted with anger. You've always thought you were better than everyone else, Ursula. Just like your father used to before he remembered what family loyalty means. Family loyalty, I laughed incredulously. Is that what you call emotional blackmail and financial exploitation? You've been bleeding my father dry for years, taking advantage of his guilt and his misguided sense of obligation. That's enough, my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Ursula, apologize to your uncle right now or leave. I looked at him in disbelief. Even now, after everything he was choosing his brother over me, I will not apologize for telling the truth, I said quietly. And if that means I have to leave, so be it. I walked out of the house, ignoring my father's calls to come back. As I reached my car, he caught up to me, grabbing my arm. You're being childish, he said. Family disagreements happen, but we work through them together. I pulled my arm away. This isn't a disagreement. This is you consistently choosing Uncle Robert and Adam over me. This is you breaking your promise about my education and then defending that decision. This is you expecting me to just accept being treated as less important than my cousin because he's male. I never said that, he protested. You didn't have to. Your actions made it perfectly clear. I opened my car door. I'm done pretending we're a normal family. I'm done pretending your betrayal didn't happen. And I'm done hoping you'll ever put me first. Where are you going? He asked, his voice suddenly smaller. Away from here. I have a research internship in Boston starting next week. I got into the car. Don't worry about me, Dad. I'll be fine on my own. I've had plenty of practice. As I drove away, I felt a confusing mixture of devastation and liberation. The final threads connecting me to my childhood home had been severed, but with that came a strange sense of freedom. I was no longer waiting for my father to make things right or acknowledge the injustice of his actions. I was moving forward, creating a new life entirely on my own terms. When I returned to campus, I applied for a transfer to a university in California for my senior year. I was accepted with a full academic scholarship based on my outstanding performance and strong recommendations from professors like Dr. Hamilton. It was time for a complete fresh start, 3,000 miles away from the family that had failed me. Moving to California marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I cut off contact with my father and extended family completely. The distance made it easier to enforce this boundary, and I threw myself into building a new life on the West Coast. The first months were challenging in different ways than before. Academically and financially, I was more secure thanks to my scholarship and a well-paying research assistant position. But emotionally, I struggled with the finality of the break with my father. Despite everything, he had been my only real family since my mother died. Now, I was truly alone. Gradually, though, I began to form new connections. My roommate Sarah introduced me to her friend group, and for the first time since high school, I had a social life that didn't revolve around work and study. I joined a hiking club and discovered the therapeutic power of exploring California's beautiful landscapes. In my advanced biochemistry class, I met Jordan, a fellow science major with a focus on biomedical engineering. We were paired for a semester-long research project and quickly discovered a shared work ethic and complementary intellectual approaches. Our academic partnership evolved into friendship and eventually into something more. Unlike previous relationships I'd attempted and abandoned because I had no time to nurture them, my connection with Jordan flourished. He understood my drive and ambition because he shared it. We studied together, challenged each other, and supported each other's goals. When graduation approached, I had multiple job offers thanks to my research experience and academic record. I accepted a position at Biogenics, a biotech startup in San Francisco, working on innovative treatments for autoimmune diseases. The salary was better than I had dared to hope for as a new graduate, and the work was fascinating. Jordan and I decided to stay together after graduation, finding apartments near each other in San Francisco. He joined a medical device company developing next-generation prosthetics. Our careers were demanding, but we made time for each other, building a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values. At Biogenics, I quickly proved myself valuable to the research team. My attention to detail, work ethic, and innovative thinking set me apart from other entry-level researchers. Within 6 months, I was leading my own small project. By the end of my first year, I had received a substantial raise and promotion. Occasionally, I would hear news about my family through distant connections or social media. Adam had abandoned his music production aspirations and was working at a cell phone store. He still lived largely off my father's support, moving from one half-hearted venture to another. Uncle Robert had developed health problems that further strained my father's finances as he helped with medical bills. My father's business was struggling. The economic recession had hit manufacturing particularly hard, and the plant where he worked had reduced operations significantly. He had been demoted from manager to supervisor with another corresponding pay cut. Yet from what I heard, he was still sending money to Uncle Robert and Adam regularly. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I was thriving professionally and financially, building a career based on merit and hard work, my father was being drained by the very people he had chosen over me. Sometimes I felt a vindictive satisfaction in this turn of events, but mostly I felt sad that he couldn't see how he was being used. Jordan and I grew closer over the next few years. He understood my family history and never judged me for cutting ties with my father. "Family should earn your trust and respect," he said once. "It shouldn't be an automatic entitlement." His own family was close-knit and supportive, and they welcomed me warmly. His mother in particular seemed to sense my need for maternal guidance and offered friendship without being pushy. Holidays with the Kimura family became a healing experience, showing me what healthy family dynamics could look like. Meanwhile, my career continued its upward trajectory. The startup received a major funding infusion after our first treatment showed promising results in clinical trials. As one of the key researchers on the project, I received stock options and another promotion, this time to research director for a new division of the company. At 30, I was earning more than my father ever had, even at the height of his career. Jordan and I bought a house together in the Bay Area, a modern 2-bedroom with a dedicated office space for each of us. We weren't wealthy by Silicon Valley standards, but we were comfortable and secure with growing investment portfolios and retirement accounts. Then 5 years after I had last spoken to him, my father reached out. An email appeared in my inbox with the subject line, "Please read Ursula." I almost deleted it without opening it, but curiosity won out. "Dear Ursula," it began. "I hope this email finds you well. I've been following your career through LinkedIn, and I'm incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. I know we haven't spoken in years, and that's largely my fault. I made mistakes that hurt you deeply, and I understand why you cut contact. But I'm writing now because I need your help. I'm facing bankruptcy and possible foreclosure on the house. I have nowhere else to turn. Would you be willing to meet with me, Dad?" I stared at the screen for a long time, conflicting emotions washing over me. Part of me felt that karmic justice had been served, that my father was finally facing the consequences of prioritizing his brother's family over his own daughter. Another part felt a flicker of the old love and connection we once shared. I showed the email to Jordan that evening. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. He considered carefully before answering. "I can't tell you what to do, Ursi, but I know you well enough to know that you'll always wonder if you don't at least hear him out. You don't have to give him money or let him back into your life if you don't want to. But maybe closure would be good for you." After several days of deliberation, I replied to my father's email. "I'll meet you. I'll be in Michigan next month for a conference. We can meet for coffee on April 15th. I provided the name of a cafe near my hotel and a time. I didn't offer sympathy or ask for details about his situation. This would be a meeting on my terms. As the date approached, I found myself increasingly anxious. I had built a new life, one where the pain of my father's betrayal no longer dominated my thoughts. Would seeing him reopen old wounds? Would he try to manipulate me emotionally? I prepared myself for all possibilities, determined to maintain my hard-won emotional equilibrium, no matter what. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived, filled with the morning rush of professionals grabbing caffeine before work. I chose a table in the corner positioned so I could see the door. At precisely 10 o'clock, my father walked in. I almost didn't recognize him. In 5 years, he had aged 20. His hair, once salt and pepper, was now completely white. Deep lines etched his face, and he walked with a slight stoop that hadn't been there before. He spotted me and made his way over his expression a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Ursula," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Thank you for meeting me." I nodded, not quite ready to speak. He sat down across from me, his hands fidgeting with a paper napkin. "You look wonderful," he said. "Successful, healthy." "I am," I replied simply. "I've done well for myself." An awkward silence fell between us. Finally, I broke it. "Your email said you're facing bankruptcy." He nodded, looking down at the table. "Yes. The house is 3 months from foreclosure. I've exhausted all my savings and retirement funds. I even took out a second mortgage a few years ago, but that money's gone too." "What happened?" I asked, though I could guess. He sighed deeply. "A combination of things. The plant downsized again. I was laid off 2 years ago. I found another job, but the pay is much less. And then there were your uncle's medical bills. He had a heart attack, no insurance. And Adam has needed a lot of help getting established." He paused. "I know how that sounds, especially to you." "It sounds like they're still draining you dry," I said flatly. He didn't deny it. "I thought I was doing the right thing helping family. But it just never ends. There's always another crisis, another need." He looked up at me, his eyes tired. "I'm sorry, Ursula. I know an apology doesn't begin to cover what I did to you, but I am truly sorry. I made the wrong choice." His apology sounded more practical than sincere, prompted by his desperate circumstances rather than genuine remorse. I wasn't ready to accept it. "Where are Uncle Robert and Adam now?" I asked. "Why aren't they helping you with your financial crisis?" His expression shifted to one of embarrassment. They're not in the picture anymore." "What does that mean?" "After my layoff, when I told Robert I couldn't keep sending money, he stopped taking my calls. Adam too. I haven't heard from either of them in over a year." I wasn't surprised, but I felt a twist of pity for my father. "So they abandoned you once the money dried up?" Tears formed in his eyes. "I gave them everything, Ursula. Everything. I sacrificed my relationship with you. I emptied my savings, I mortgaged my future, and the moment I couldn't give more, they disappeared." For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his expression. Not just regret for the consequences he was facing, but true understanding of the magnitude of his mistake. "I keep thinking about your mother," he continued, wiping his eyes. "She would be so disappointed in me. She always said you were our greatest achievement, our legacy. And I betrayed that when I took your college fund." I sat back, processing his words. The father I remembered would never have admitted such a profound mistake. His pride wouldn't have allowed it. This broken man before me had been humbled by the consequences of his actions. "How much do you need?" I asked. Hope flashed in his eyes. "About 40,000 to clear the back payments and fees. But Ursula, I'm not asking for a handout. I know I don't deserve that. Maybe a loan's something I can pay back once I'm on my feet again." I considered his request. I could easily afford to give him the money. Between my salary bonuses and stock options, $40,000 wouldn't significantly impact my finances. But I wasn't sure that giving him money was the right move for either of us. "I'm not going to give you the money," I said finally. His face fell, but he nodded. "I understand. I had no right to ask." "But," I continued, "I am willing to help you in other ways. I have a friend who runs a financial counseling service. She specializes in helping people avoid bankruptcy and rebuild their finances. I'll pay for her services for you." He looked surprised. "That's very generous." "And," I added, "one of our suppliers has a manufacturing facility near here. They're looking for experienced personnel. I can put in a word for you, help you get an interview. The pay would be better than what you're making now with good benefits." "You do that for me, after everything." "I'm not doing it for you exactly," I said honestly. "I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Because despite everything, you're still my father. And because I don't want to be the kind of person who turns their back on family even when that family has hurt them." The irony of my words wasn't lost on him. He winced slightly but nodded. "But let me be clear," I continued. "This help comes with conditions. First, no more financial support for Uncle Robert or Adam. They're adults who need to take responsibility for their own lives." "That won't be a problem," he said grimly. "They've made it clear they only valued me for my money." Second, we rebuild our relationship slowly on my terms. No pressure, no guilt trips. I have a life in California that I'm not willing to disrupt. "Of course," he agreed quickly. "Anything you're comfortable with." And third, I want you to really understand what you did. Not just the financial impact, but the emotional one. You chose your brother's son over your own daughter. You broke a promise that Mom and you made to me. You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible." He nodded, tears streaming freely now. "I know, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." He hesitated, then added, "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become, Ursula. Despite my failures, you've created an extraordinary life for yourself." Something in his sincere acknowledgement touched a place in my heart I thought had hardened completely. "Thank you for saying that." We talked for another hour, carefully navigating the fragile beginnings of a new relationship. I told him about my work, about Jordan, about the life I had built. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions. He told me about his struggles of the past few years, about the hard lessons he had learned about family and loyalty. Before we parted, I gave him my financial counselor friend's contact information and promised to speak to my connection at the manufacturing company. "I'll be in touch," I said, "but don't expect miracles. This will take time." "I understand," he replied. "And Ursula, thank you, not just for the help but for being willing to see me at all. You had every right to ignore my email." As I watched him walk away, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was still hurt, still anger, but there was also a sense of closure I hadn't expected. My father had finally recognized the gravity of his betrayal and was facing the consequences of his choices. And I had found the strength to offer help without compromising my own well-being or boundaries. Over the next year, we rebuilt a cautious relationship. My father worked with the financial counselor and secured the job at the manufacturing facility. He slowly stabilized his finances and saved his house from foreclosure. We spoke monthly by phone, and I visited Michigan occasionally when business trips brought me to the Midwest. My own life continued to flourish. Jordan and I got married in a small ceremony in California, and my father attended, keeping a respectful distance from the spotlight. Biogenics' treatments received FDA approval, and as a key researcher, I was offered partnership in the company. During one of my visits to Michigan about a year and a half after our coffee shop meeting, my father and I had a healing conversation that I had not expected would ever be possible. "I need to tell you something I should have said long ago," he began as we sat on his back porch. "What I did wasn't just wrong because it hurt you financially. It was wrong because it showed a fundamental lack of respect for you as a person." I listened silently, surprised by his insight. "I had these old-fashioned ideas about family," he continued, "about men being responsible for carrying on the family name and legacy. I valued Adam's potential future over your actual achievements because of those biases. It was sexist and unjust, and I'm deeply ashamed of it." His acknowledgement of the gender bias that had influenced his decision brought tears to my eyes. It was something I had felt intuitively, but had never heard him admit. "The irony is," he added with a sad smile, "you were always the one who truly carried on the best of our family values. Your mother's compassion and intelligence, my work ethic. You embodied everything we hope to pass on, and I was too blind to see it. That conversation marked a turning point in our healing process. The acknowledgement of the full extent of his mistake, including the sexist attitudes that had influenced it, allowed me to finally begin forgiving him, not for his sake, but for my own peace of mind. In the years since that initial reunion, I've learned that sometimes the people who should lift you highest are the ones who let you fall. But in that fall, I found my wings, and now I fly higher than anyone in my family ever dreamed possible. I established a scholarship fund for young women pursuing careers in scientific research, ensuring that others wouldn't face the financial barriers that nearly derailed my own dreams. My relationship with my father today is respectful but cautious. The deep trust and closeness we once shared is gone forever, replaced by something more measured and mature. He has earned a place in my life again, but never again will I depend on him the way a daughter normally depends on her father. The betrayal that once defined my life has become just one chapter in a much longer, richer story. A story of resilience, self-reliance, and ultimately triumph. A story that I now share in the hope that it might inspire others facing their own family betrayals to find the strength to forge their own paths. Have you ever had someone close to you betray your trust? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building a life on your own terms. Remember, sometimes the path to success isn't the one that was planned for you, but the one you create for yourself. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey of resilience and self-discovery.